The official documentation. The Delphi development environment comes with online help that you can optionally install from the installer during the overall installation or later in Tools Manage Platforms or Tools Manage Features, depending on your version. You also have the option to view the entire help. What you'll find in the help file in the environment is also available on the website docwiki.embarcadero.com. Let's go for it. On that site, you can find the different versions of Delphi, RAD Studio, and C++ Builder that were available. In the other version section, you have several languages: French, English, German, and Japanese for the documentation. By default, land on the documentation page for the current version. Here we can find Delphi RStudio, C++ Builder, Interbase, if you're using that database engine, and other tools that have been released by Embarcadero or other companies related to Embarcadero, especially with the Architect versions. On the Delphi side, if I go there, we find the information for version 12, knowing that there's a 12.1 Athens that has been released, an update 1, and you have the update information at this level. If I go back to the main page of a major version, we have the overview section that covers the new features and information regarding installation and things that have been added or modified along the way. There's a Getting Started section with some tutorials, videos, and seminars, and you'll find the Windows Development Reference part, multi-device development for FireMonkey, mobile development for FireMonkey as well, and web development that covers WebBroker, DataSnap, and RAD Server, which are included with the Community Pro versions for WebBroker. And starting from the Architect Edition for DataSnap and RAD Server, since it involves client-server setups and remote feature calls, as well as remote database access, with RAD Server being a full web server, and a UML section that is also available in certain versions as an option now in Delphi. In fact, the documentation is organized into sections, so when you search at the top, you might not necessarily land on the one that interests you. Here, you essentially have the textual documentation part, explanations, tutorials, and information on why certain features work the way they do. If you want information like what we have in the F1 key, when you're in the source code, just go straight to the reference library, which actually contains the documentation related to VCL units, FireMonkey, system, so the RTL, and possibly others depending on where we are. And in there, for example, if I want to look up what's going on with a TEDit, I just need to search for the name of the component, and it should normally suggest the different pages that talk about TEDit based on the framework I want to use, VCL for Windows, FireMonkey for multi-platform. If you're not in the reference library section, you'll get pages of explanations. If you're in the reference library section, you'll have the docs breaking things down just like you see in the integrated help in the environment. Depending on what you're doing, make sure to come back to it because you might not find the information you were looking for. Just like in the online help, you can click on the inheritance of components or classes. When it comes to classes, you have the methods, properties, events, and fields, and other sections depending on the type of elements you're looking at, and you can have links between several documentation pages, as you also have the option to get examples right in there. When you're on a documentation page in French, German, or Japanese, feel free to switch back to the English version. Since the documentation is mainly created in English, the other pages are translated. So there can sometimes be translations that aren't understandable, or things that may have evolved, and the page hasn't necessarily been updated. So here on the TEDit in French, we see at the bottom of the page that the last update of the page was on February 19, 2015. If you go back to the English version, you should normally have the most up-to-date one. In this case, it dates from the same period, so there hasn't been any evolution that would be behind in the translation. Don't hesitate to switch back to the English version if you have any doubts, and also feel free to open a ticket by clicking on the QP link for Quality Portal if you find any errors in the documentation. This allows it to evolve, so submit information saying what's going on, in which language you were, and what needs to be corrected or what isn't clear. Of course, if you come across pages that don't contain information on what you're looking for, feel free to point that out too, because it shows that these features interest you and that potentially something should be added there one day. That's it for the documentation part.